We talk a lot about how creative is really important in the advertising world, and it is, and I don't want to downplay it at all, but I actually am going to take the step back and say messaging is going to be even more important because we're going to enter into that stage where because we can't target as well as we used to be able to, we'll have to create creative that resonates with the audience we want it to and doesn't resonate with the audience we don't want it to.
Welcome to the Marketing Expedition Podcast, an auditory journey through the latest in marketing, branding, and advertising. Now, here's your Marketing Expedition guide, Ray Allen.
On this episode of the Marketing Expedition Podcast, I get to speak with Samir Balwani, and he is a CEO and founder of Query, a media agency that helps e-commerce and DTC brands like Delzy, Zadig, Voltaire, Peak Design accelerate their growth. And Samir is a true marketing strategist and thought leader with over 15 years of marketing experience. He's held high-level positions at companies like PMK, BNC, Kitcaster, and American Express. And we're going to talk about all the things, unlocking 5 different stages of success in e-commerce and branding and all the wonderful things that you're going to need to stick around for. But first, it's time for our marketing essentials moments, the basics that you need to help you continue to build your brand and your bottom line. This week's topic, I want to cover some things that I wish I would have maybe known a long time ago that I've uncovered and discovered that have helped me in our business over the last 20 years. Peppershock's been around for 20 years now. So, number 1, know your elevator pitch. Know what you're going to say, how you're going to say it, and who you're going to say it to. Practice it, rehearse it, have it in your mind, because sometimes when a microphone is handed to you and you're just ready and you're not ready, you can fail miserably. So really have a message dialed in that you can speak in your sleep if you have to. Have the tonality, the raise in your voice, how you want to make emphasis on the things that you say, how you say it. And yeah, sure, it can adapt based on the circumstance or how you're presenting yourself. If you truly are in an elevator and you only have 30 seconds to speak, then that's what you do. But make sure that you have it dialed in and that all of your other staff have it dialed in too, so that the same message is consistent and it's getting out there. Now, each person might have a different role at the company. And maybe when people ask, well, what is it that you do for a living? Then everyone needs to be able to recite similar messaging in any given moment, right? And that's something that can be consistent. And even if you don't have a company that you're working for, maybe it's your personal brand. What do you represent? What's your mission, your vision, your mantra, your, who you are, what you do as a person, and why you do what you do. Why is it that you do what you do? Just have it dialed in. The words that you own, those things that you want people to remember you by. And by the way, make it repeatable. Make it easy enough that people can then introduce you to someone else and repeat some of the words that you had to say, to make it portable so that other people can repeat it just like you did. Number 2, another thing I wish I would have known earlier in my career than what I, now know. You don't always have to prove yourself. If you don't know something, it's okay to say, you know what? I don't know the answer to that, but I'm going to find out for you. Or I maybe know somebody else who does know the answer to that. You don't always have to prove that you're the know-it-all, that you're always the expert at everything. Because if you tried to do that, then you'd be the expert to no one because you're trying to do all things for all people. It's okay to admit that you don't know something. I really wish I would have caught on to that earlier on in my career. It's okay that you don't know something. But you know what? You can be resourceful and find out, or Google that, right? Let me Google that for you. Or if it's something that is a little more, personal, or maybe it's a connection or something that you need to inquire that's not something you can just easily find online, then who do you know? Who are the mentors in your life? Who are the influencers in your life? The people that have, your circle of influence. Ask questions. Hey, who knows something about XYZ? This one stumped me. I didn't know about this and I want to learn more. Guide me, direct me. Tell me somebody who knows more about this than I do. Number 3, something I wish I would have learned early on. Business happens after hours a lot of the times. And I think that I didn't recognize that as soon as I wish I would have. There's networking functions, there's events that you go to, there are nonprofits that you can support because they have fundraising events, or they have events that they get their, board members and donors and volunteers together. There are, I don't know, all kinds of different things that are always happening. After 5 o'clock, business is not done. There is more to be done in business after hours than other hours. It's really fascinating from a networking and sales and marketing perspective. Things are done after hours because there's a couple of things that occur. Food, always, there's always something around food and or beverages, right? The liquid courage that sometimes people need in order to be able to, get past their inhibitions of being able to meet new people, right? Make new friends. And, sometimes it's getting comfortable with the uncomfortable. But a lot of business happens when we're doing things that are outside of the office. We're out networking, we're at functions, we're golfing, we're, I don't know, you name it. I'm sure you can think of it and dream it. And a good source of where to go for those types of networking events is your Chamber of Commerce. So we belong to a couple of different Chamber of Commerces in our area, and there's always something going on, whether it's a ribbon cutting or, a speaker series or a lunch and learn or something that is going to put you in a room with other people. Be there and make sure that they're the right types of people that you want to be around. That's your target audience. Identify who that target audience is and understand those are the types of people that you want to meet. Another thing along those lines is connect yourself with good connectors. And I think that is something that has been a really good passion of mine, is to be able to connect other people with those who need somebody who help them to then, reciprocate, right? Being that go-giver and having that go-giver mentality. There's a book by Bob Berg called The Go-Giver, and then he also wrote The Go-Giver Sells More. So being able to be a resource and be a connector, and then it'll come back to you in abundance. And it does, right? If you connect and really connect those dots and inspire other people to make those connections and ask those referrals. Another thing I wish I would have learned when I was just starting out our business 20 years ago. Now, mind you, this is aging me a little bit, but in early 2000s, right? 2003, some of these tools that we have now are not even, they weren't even existing. Like Facebook wasn't even a thing until 2006, 2007. And so just constantly adapting and being able to be on the forefront of what's next and what's happening and not being afraid and embracing being an early adopter. I think that is something I wish I would have even done more of, even more than I already did. And I've always been that early adopter and kind of on the leading edge, but what is it that I could have done had I not done, if I would have done it sooner, right? And so not being afraid to explore new tools and technologies. And now we have AI tools, right? And so there's so many things that we can use to our advantage if we just allow ourselves to do that and not be afraid of change, right? Embracing change and growing forward, right? Being able to continuously evolve in what is out there at our resources at our fingertips now. So don't be afraid to test new things and iterate and try new tools and tips and technologies and tactics that you may not have done before. And it's going to be eye-opening for you if you embrace the new ways of doing things, right? So those are some things that I wanted to share with you, and hopefully you've got some value from this. And if you're struggling with any of these things, reach out to me. Let me know. How can I help you? You can always book 15 minutes of time with me. And, if we need to reschedule, we can, but you can use my scheduling app to do that. And it's peppershock.com/book-ray. Schedule 15 minutes with me. Let's have a conversation. Peppershock.com/book-ray. Make sure you spell Ray correctly, RHEA. And I can't wait to hear from you. Let's talk. Let's have a conversation about this stuff. All right, let's get into the interview and go from there. Welcome to the Marketing Expedition podcast. I'm your host, Ray Allen. I'm the president and CEO of Peppershock Media and the founder of the Marketing Expedition community. And today's guest, we have Samir. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
And Samir, let's just give a brief background about you and what you've been doing over the last 15 years to get to where you are and all of this wonderful marketing experience that you have.
Yeah, so I've been in advertising and marketing for quite a while now, working on all kinds of things. So, everywhere from the agency side, working on brands like LVMH, to startup, working as head of marketing at Stylecaster, to most recently, before I started the agency, enterprise, helping build brand strategy for American Express. So, I've kind of touched every piece of the pie and settled in on the agency side. So now I'm running an agency called Query. We're a paid media agency helping brands blend brand awareness and performance marketing to really grow sustainably over time.
I love that, performance marketing. Why don't you share a little bit more about what you mean by performance marketing?
Yeah. So performance marketing is anything on the paid media side that is really meant to be short-term ROI generating. So has you would think about remarketing campaigns. So someone is in market, has already looked at your product, is ready to purchase, making sure you don't lose them. That's a performance channel. In comparison, billboard or a direct mail piece where it's really just introducing the brand to new people. That's a brand awareness play. The thinking about it more of an investment with long-term revenue attached to it versus short-term results.
And one of the things that you had in your profile to discuss is to unlock the 5 stages of success.
Yeah.
Tell us what you mean by that.
Yeah. So I think we have this theory around how e-commerce brands kind of grow, and they go through 5 key stages.
Yeah.
The first stage really being this concept around product market fit. So, you hear about product market fit, it usually applies to like a SaaS business. And you don't think, this boutique that I have, or this retail store that I have, or this brand that I'm starting needs to have product market fit. But it really does. The products you create, the product that you sell needs to have a community that it actually resonates with. And something of a stepping stone that you can then build word of mouth off of and actually kind of grow from. And so that's stage one of just like really understanding, do people even want what you are selling? And
Right.
and I think most brands kind of get stuck there, to be very honest,
Mhm.
and have a real hard struggle getting out of that stage.
Mhm.
There's a lot of testing that needs to happen, a lot of messaging and product development, right? Once you hit stage
Yeah.
two, that's when a lot of brands will start to think about performance marketing and other channels. Yeah, at this stage, I still don't think you should be investing heavily in advertising because you're just getting your feet off the ground. And, you've realized who your community is, but you should be small enough that you can actually talk to your community. And this is where founder-led growth comes from, and it's like boutique shows and trade shows and pop-ups and influencer outreach and all of that kinds of fun stuff to kind of get that flywheel flowing. Stage three is when media starts to flow into it, and now you kind of have this momentum behind you, and advertising has a place to play. People are coming and checking out the site on their own. People you don't know are purchasing from you, and that's where remarketing campaigns and branded search, all of the lower funnel activations should really be in full
Mhm.
force. And this is I have a bucket and I want to make sure it's not leaky. So let's
Yeah.
turn on all of those campaigns. Stage four, now you're kind of expanding out and you're going to start building brand awareness because you said, all right, I've already activated all of the channels that I know and I'm doing everything I can. I'm running out of time and now I need scale. And,
Mhm.
and that's where stage four really comes in. And now you're reaching people that are still problem aware. And so we talk about this as they want your product, but they don't know your brand. And now, so that's who you're reaching with your advertising and your marketing at this stage, because you've already fulfilled on everyone that knows who your brand is, and you're capturing that, and you're feeling good about that. And now it's kind of going out to the next concentric circle. And then at stage five, now you're talking category development. I am introducing people to my product, my brand, and the problem that we solve because they just don't even know about it. And stage five is where you start to see the big flashy stuff like, TV and podcast, sponsorships, things like that. That's when we're talking true, brand awareness campaigns, attached with performance media to make sure you have a full funnel campaign, top to bottom.
Right. And it's not just traditional TV you're talking about. I bet you're talking more of the connected TV and streaming all the things, right?
Yeah, I mean, look, there's a time and a place for everything. Connected TV is a huge boon for brands that want to activate TV on smaller budgets, right? Like you don't need to set aside $1 million to run a TV ad. You can do it on a few $100,000. And I think the biggest barrier for a lot of brands is just having really good creative assets. And so if you have really good creative assets for connected TV, you should absolutely explore it. It is not expensive, and it is very effective.
Yeah. Well, and trackable. I mean, we are in such a world now that we can track and trace everything. I mean, you said the retargeting or remarketing, and being able to track when people are about to abandon their shopping cart, for example, and then
Yeah.
being able to message them and say, "Hey, you forgot something." I mean, it's just like down to the little details of every step of the way, right? And just understanding those details and understanding how your customer is going to buy from you or not, and why, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think that that's the best part of the whole process around being able to really build an understanding of how people want to engage with your brand, speaking to them at different stages. Because how I talk to somebody that doesn't know who my brand is going to be very different from somebody who's ready to purchase from my brand, which should be different from someone who has already purchased from my brand. If you've already
Right.
bought, I don't need to explain to you what makes us different. You already know, you've experienced it. And so, maybe we want to remind you, but that's very different than trying to convince you. And so I think that that's some of the beauty of digital advertising, is being able to do all of that. Now, take that with a grain of salt. Of a lot of that may start to go away over the next few months and through the end of the year, as we start to lose a lot of signal data when cookies go away and privacy policies kind of come into place. And we are having to go back on the advertising side and think through how we do it and what we do. Um, Advertising has definitely become a lot more complicated than it was, 3 years
Yeah.
ago, and even before that, where you could just say, all right, we spent $1, we got $3, let's keep rolling. And now it's definitely, okay, was that an incremental dollar? Would we have gotten those dollars if we didn't advertise? Do we
Mhm.
advertise to the right people? Are they going to be good customers for a long period of time, or just purchase once and go away? So there's a lot of questions to answer, and it can be as simplistic or it can be as complicated as you need it to be. And depending on your size, you kind of fit in somewhere on that bell curve.
Yeah, I was just at a restaurant, and we were talking about loyalty programs because they've never used one before, and the ideas behind it and how they would market it and put it out there. And it I think they had the huge aha moment that they can collect data from their customers, and be able to have their phone number and text them messages. And we were kind of brainstorming ideas of what they could do and how they could go about it. But it's always good when people can give you their own information, like first party data, right? And now, we have all these different cookies and things that we have to manage and deal with, and privacy laws and all the things that are sometimes just interrupting us and being able to do what we do as marketers. But have you seen how has it impacted you and what you do with your, the different channels that you put in place for your customers? And the information that we once maybe could have gotten, now it's different, and how to get it. How has it impacted what has happened with your customers and their journeys, and when they're purchasing, I guess, your customers who are then trying to get to their customers, right? What have you seen, the whole privacy issues and everything? How's that come down to you?
We've spent a lot of time thinking about it, talking about it internally,
Yeah.
putting plans together. So to your point, first party data is huge, and making sure that we have an understanding of first party data, having a strategy against how we're going to actually capture first party data, incentivize it. What does it even mean? So is it just name and email, or is it name, email, phone number, address, right? Like, how much information do we want, and what are we giving people in return? So loyalty programs, membership programs are huge. They are
Yeah.
really valuable. Early access programs are huge because there's value to that as well. It doesn't always have to be, take 20% off or 15% off. There's other innovative ways to do it for us. And so that's what we're thinking about pretty regularly. In terms of once that signal loss comes into place, it's actually interesting. There's an ad tech platform called Criteo, I think yesterday or the day before that, announced, and they said in the second half of the year, they'll probably lose $30 to $40 million in revenue, just because they won't be able to target people. And they're going to lose that data, which means that they can't run those ads. And so it
Right.
will have an impact in what we do in the second half of the
Yeah.
year. And it's up to us to figure out, okay, well, how do we pivot? And so everything from contextual targeting, which is we're advertising based on what we see on the page, and it's back to old
Yeah.
school targeting, and we're going to lose some of that. And so how do we get that to work versus what are the channels that we're investing in? Are we spending more money on Meta and Google because they're a walled garden, meaning that you're logged into Facebook, so Facebook knows who you are. They're less impacted by the changes that we're seeing. So then are we also looking at Pinterest and Reddit and X? Like, are we looking at all these channels again that maybe we've pulled back from because we've had other channels to work with, and now we've got to kind of go back into them. So this is what I mean by your media can be as simplistic or as complicated as you need it to be. It can be super simplistic and you can say, great, we're going to do Google and Meta all day long, but we're going to cap ourselves. And we're going to reach this plateau and we're okay with that. We'll look elsewhere. Or you can say, I've hit this plateau and now it's time to figure out what else is out there. And you kind of, that's where it starts to get really complicated.
Well, back in the dinosaur days when we just had traditional media, when it became new media, in those days, we couldn't necessarily communicate and track is the things that we did. I mean, maybe you could, have a vanity URL and use it on radio with a specific, phone number that they would call or something like that. But it's fascinating how within the last 15 years, things have changed. And now we're kind of taking a step back by not being able to have that data that we used to, within this time frame. But you're right, coming up with other ways, coming up with new methods and using QR codes for people to do something with, or just finding those little ways to be able to have those call to actions to get people to do something. And it's almost like we're going back to the dinosaur days almost, because we can't have that anymore.
And I love it. So I think actually, and I know a lot of people will not agree with me on this, but so be it. But I actually think the amount of data that we have and this concept of performance marketing has led to so many bad habits for brands where you end up in a situation where you just have invested in short-term revenue growth and you've created this flywheel that's been dependent on 2 or 3 channels and you've been able to grow a brand off of that. But the brand's just been an arbitrage model versus an actual brand with a community where people are excited about the product and you've actually built equity in what you stand for. And so I'm excited to kind of go back to that norm of true brand building and investing in brand and bringing the CMO to the table and saying, hey, hey CFO, there's a brand equity line for a reason. Let's use it and let's talk about it. So I think that's going to be really valuable. The other part about it is we talk a lot about how creative is really important in the advertising world, and it is, and I don't want to downplay it at all, but I actually am going to take the step back and say messaging is going to be even more important because we're going to enter into that stage where, because we can't target as well as we used to be able to, we'll have to create creative that resonates with the audience we want it to and doesn't resonate with the audience we don't want it to. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. If you were in Google search back in the day before targeting, you used to do that in your Google Ads copy because you would not want to pay for someone that isn't your target market to click on your ad. So you would purposely create creative that spoke to your target market. If you were selling an expensive product, you would put the price in there so that way anyone that wasn't interested in that price point wouldn't click the ad and you wouldn't pay for it, right? So people would opt into ads, almost is the best way to put it. And so I think we're going to see a lot of that where you will see more broader spectrum, lower cost ads with the expectation that the creative messaging is going to allow the right person to lean into the ad and convert on the back end.
And it's nothing that Chat GPT, it can give you ideas, but we still need human intelligence, right?
Yeah. I mean, someone's got to look at the data. Someone's got to have an understanding of it. And I do think AI is going to change how we do the work that we do, but people are anything but predictable. And so as long as we continue to have emotions and feelings and need to be able to tap into that, ChatGPT is going to still need someone on the other end to help translate what that means.
Putting in the right prompts and asking the right questions and still being able to, not everything can be run automatically.
I mean, is the way we talk about it. So on the media side, we've been dealing with AI for God knows how long. It has been like a consistent thing for us in that, we've been using it. Performance Max has been around for a while. Advantage Plus has been around. We've had AI driven bidding on Google search for quite a while. So, we're pretty used to dealing with AI. And what I tell people is it's like being a baker. Everyone has an oven and the oven can put, whatever you want, can make whatever you need. It's still a tool at the end of the day. And me at home baking will never do nearly as well as a professional baker actually baking. Like, we can have the same ingredients and the same tool, but it's how we put it together, how long it stays in there, and what comes out on the other end that's really important. And so that's how I think about AI. Is it's my media team really thinking through, all right, well, what are the inputs that are going to go in for it? How long do we need it to be there? How are we actually activating it? What comes out on the other end?
Yeah, for sure. Well, and it's fascinating because it continues to evolve every day. There's always something new or some, new way to do something that continues to get discovered and uncovered, that's exciting. It is, because now you're right. We have to get creative and get back to creative again, and not just lean on tools that were otherwise, like you said, making people lazy,
Yeah. Yeah.
as marketers, because it was easy, but no more easy button.
No, I mean, I think like the world of Meta, where you used to know, all right, I can run Facebook ads and I'm going to get an extremely strong return on ad spend and be able to scale a brand based off of this. I mean, you're seeing it pretty consistently across most brands, is that they can't rely on it at the scale that they were before. It's still an important channel. It's still an important tool for reaching consumers, but it can't scale the way it was previously.
Yeah.
And that's a lot to do with data loss and just shifting consumer behavior as a whole.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I think as we revisit, as people start to think about, the brands and what motivates them to actually purchase and what they're purchasing and why, brand marketing is going to have a bigger play.
Yeah. Can you think of an example of a client that you worked with, and you can choose to name names if you'd want. If not, that's fine too. But maybe just run me through the path of what you did for them, how you did what you did, and the benefits that they saw as a result of going and working with you in the different channels that you selected for them.
Yeah. Yeah. There's so many fun success stories that we've been able to do. And so I won't name names because I'll keep it pretty broad, but we worked with a client of ours, and they're a pretty large consumer goods brand, and they reach a really interesting niche community, which is awesome. Their brand is very design forward, and their customers have very high expectations. And so we were able to work with them to really identify like their core customer segments. And, the brand's pretty sophisticated, so they had a good understanding of who their customers were. And we translated that into how we would target them online. We partnered with an awesome media creative agency to actually bring that to life. And what we did is we created a full funnel campaign for them. And we did this last year, and we're actually doing it again this year because it performs so well. But really thinking through from June onwards, what is our prospecting campaign? So what are the brand building activities that we're going to be doing to help us set up for Q4 success? So June through September, we did a lot of brand building, a lot of growth, a lot of, I don't want to say it was not profitable, but almost break even spend, because we knew that we would plant those seeds and then see them sprout in Q4 and be able to reap it then. And it played exactly how we expected it to play. And we had some of the biggest revenue days. We had large revenue growth. I think the brand exceeded every metric that it had put out there for itself for the year. And so I think brands need to, so going back to bad habits, right? I think the biggest bad habit that brands made is they became so risk adverse in their marketing that innovation and new ideas were stifled, because if it couldn't be tracked and there wasn't an ROI metric against it, it wasn't done. And I think that that's where marketers really need to think about right now, or what are the big bets you want to make that don't have an ROI against it, but you're excited about and you think that there's an opportunity that it'll perform well. And then working with your finance partners to get them comfortable with it, because look, they're going to have a real hard time. Like, the CFO or the controller is going to be like, all right, well, I gave you $10. Like, I needed 20 back. What do you mean you don't know what's going to happen? What if I lose all 10? And you kind of have to be okay with that and have an understanding that it's a big bet and you're going to learn something in the process, and just know that there needs to be some level of risk here, but that there is a payoff on the other end. So having an understanding of that is key.
Yeah, that's true. I think being able to not necessarily always have to attribute an ROI to everything that you do, and understand that you're building that brand equity, building the brand name, but then having, like you said, the finance partners and the, the CFO getting comfortable with the uncomfortable, right? I mean, that's really truly what that whole conversation, I can just envision it now.
Yeah. I mean, the
Yep.
way we do it is we help our clients really understand what their guardrails should be. So my team's very comfortable. We'll talk to CFOs pretty regularly and just help them understand, okay, look, we're going to bake a big bet into this campaign plan. We assume that the big bet literally loses all the money. If it does $0, this is what your bottom is going to look like. If it does what we think it's going to do, this is what it looks like. And if it goes gangbusters, this is what it'll look like. And so once we have guardrails in place, once CFOs can plan for the worst case scenario, they tend to be a lot more open to good ideas. But it's really just thinking about it from that perspective and helping them understand what the impacts are. And look, our CFO partners are not marketers, so they don't really understand what it means to be and what it means to do the work that we do. No different than
Yeah.
I know what they do, right? Like I could not walk you through my tax plan by any means. And so, so I think that there is an education piece for them for sure.
Yeah, no. And that is half the battle, is just convincing and explaining why, and being able to spend the money without, them seeing a direct impact to the bottom line and revenue, right?
I mean, the funny part about it is we get it on both ends of the spectrum, right? So sometimes we'll get it
Yeah.
of, why would I invest in this? This has zero return. Like, why would you spend money here? And then sometimes we get it on the other end where it's like, hey, that campaign that you spent, $50,000 on had a 10x return. Why don't we just spend 5 million? And you're like, well, that's not how that works. Like, it's just like has diminishing returns. And so there is this like level of education that needs to happen on both ends of the spectrum. And we put together full media plans and media flights, so that way we can talk our partners through, hey, this is what we're doing. This is why we're doing it. This is what we think is going to happen. This is what it means to have diminishing returns. And this is what it means to plateau. Because, a lot of the work that we do just is difficult to communicate. And so making sure everyone's on board and understands it is the hardest part.
No, that's great. Now it's time for a message from one of our partners, Kitcaster. Did you know that podcasts are a great way to grow your personal and business brand? And Kitcaster is a podcast booking agency that specializes in developing real human connections through podcast appearances. We've had several guests from Kitcaster on the Marketing Expedition podcast as well. So if you're an expert in your field, have a unique story to share, or an interesting point of view, it's time to explore the world of podcasting with Kitcaster. You can expect a completely customized concierge service from their staff of communication experts. Kitcaster is your secret weapon in podcasting for business. Your audience is waiting to hear from you. Go to kitcaster.com/expedition to apply for a special offer for friends of this podcast. So let's talk a little bit more about if someone would like to get into this space or the industry that you're in. What advice would you give a young, college about to graduate student that is looking to, pursue a career similar to yours? What would you tell them?
Digital advertising is such a fun space to be in, and digital marketing as a whole. So I would say step one is do it yourself. Substack, LinkedIn, whatever, just start marketing yourself. The amount that you'll learn by doing that work and having a newsletter and just share your thoughts, it's like having a blog of old. And I think that there's a lot of value in just exploring for yourself. So that's step one for sure. Step two is take any certifications you can, Meta exams, Google exams. There's a lot of value in really just understanding how those platforms work. And there's a lot of information out there. So definitely do that. And the third one is I highly recommend, if you are fresh out of college and looking for a new role, to go work at an agency. I think that there's so much value, even if you don't do it for a long time. Do it for 2-3 years. That's fine. 2 years. The amount that you learn on the agency or startup side is so valuable because you do so much across so many different clients, client types, all kinds of things. So I recommend your first role be something where you know you're going to learn a lot. And that tends to be on the agency or startup side.
Right, right. I know. I think that that's one thing that Drew and I, my husband and I started the business and we were young. And yeah, we had interned at other agencies and things like that, but we were determined and I had to learn some things on our own that I otherwise probably could have learned having worked at an agency longer than what we did, you know?
I mean, I will say, being on the startup was probably was the fastest crash course onto an MBA. I think I was like 24 years old managing a
Yeah.
P&L, and you're just like, you have those moments where you're like, I don't know that I should be doing this. And it's you just have to figure it out. And I think that that's one of the most valuable skill sets of, all right, I'll just, I'll figure it out. And that means,
Fake it till you make it.
yeah. Or,
The saying.
and, the other thing that I would say, and I still do this to this day, and I think it's probably a superpower that most entrepreneurs have, is don't be afraid to ask for help. And like,
Right.
just email anybody. Most people will be pretty excited to help you if you are genuine, right? Like if you say, hey, I'm really curious about this. You guys did something really interesting. I'd love to chat with you about it. I would say if you emailed people, you'd probably get a 75% hit rate. And the more senior you go, the higher the hit rate will be, which I think is the funniest part of that. Like,
Right.
I mean, I bet if you emailed one of my old SVPs at Amex or something like that, they would be the happiest person to just talk to you, because they recognize that the next generation of marketers are people that will potentially be on their team, and they want them to be set up for success. And so people will always be open to just share their thoughts with you and give you advice.
I think that's so true. And a next step to that, the word to the wise, make sure you're getting advice from those that are worthy
Yes.
of giving the advice, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
doesn't necessarily mean you always have to listen to it. It's just that you are seeking out advice and understanding for sure.
Yeah.
That's good. That's good. Okay, aside from you being on this podcast, what are some things that you're doing to help market your own digital marketing agency?
So we do a lot. So you should check out our site. So it's weareqry.com. You'll see we publish articles pretty consistently. I actually run my own podcast called Ecom Experiences, where I interview marketing leaders and ecom founders about their experiences running ecom brands. So we've got a few episodes out. It's a lot of fun. I have learned so much through that process.
Yeah.
And it is fun to hear some of the challenges that our brand founders are dealing with. And then I also run a website called chiefadvertiser.com. I highly recommend, if you are really into advertising, you check that out and subscribe there. We do 2 or 3 articles a week around what's going on in the advertising world, everything from privacy policies to new IPOs. So Reddit's IPOing right now, and what that impact is going to have on advertisers. So definitely a really easy way to stay ahead of what's happening in the ads world.
Right. No, that's good. I love that. Chiefadvertiser.com. That's a nice URL that you got there. That's cool.
Yeah. That's my second hobby, is collecting URLs.
Domain name. Yeah, that's I remember back in the day when people would just buy up whatever.com they could come up with and then resell it, and that would be the way they made money, and still people do, but it was like, oh my gosh.
Now there's so many domain name like endings that you can just, everything exists again.
Yep. Again, all over again. Yep.
Yeah.
So what are ways that you stay ahead of the game? Like what kind of resources or tools do you use to keep up on our industry?
Oh, yeah, that's a great question. Feedly is probably one of the best tools that I've ever used. I don't know if you're an RSS reader, but I use Feedly, and it organizes all of my RSS feeds and newsletters and anything I need all into one. So I can keep track of any of my article, any of the news articles, anything like that. We're also part of the IAB, which is the Interactive Advertising Bureau, and a bunch of other trade organizations. So we're part of NRF, which is the National Retail Federation also. So they do a lot of programming, which helps. And then transparently, I learn the most from my team, whose job it is to make sure they are up on top of everything. So I will say that is probably the biggest area where I learn the most. We do weekly lunch and learns internally where someone is sharing something new that they've learned. And then we have a Today I Learned Slack channel, which is kind of buzzing constantly with new tools, new resources, ideas, information. And then, going back to the advice that I gave for someone new of starting your own blog or newsletter, when I write chief advertiser content or someone else writes it, because we get a lot of guest posts on there too, I learned through that process, right? Doing the research, talking to people, between the Ecom Experiences podcast, I think I learned a ton from the founders themselves. And so, it's really this concept of just continually staying curious. I think I block off probably about 30% of my week to just learning and staying ahead of, what's coming up.
Yeah. And keeping ahead of the trends and knowing and anticipating the changes and the rules that you have to abide by now and all the things. It's good.
Yeah, and it's funny because I think the speed at which things are changing has increased too.
Yeah.
So like where you would usually have a few years before things change, it just feels like, okay, well, we're on to the next already. Like I'm excited about AI, but I feel like in about a year we're not going to talk about it again. It's just like I'm like, guys, can we just like get it right all the way before we move on to the next thing? So yeah, I think that there is a lot to stay ahead of, and that's the benefit of working with an agency, right? Like that is our job, is to stay ahead of it, to have an understanding and a point of view on the stuff that's gonna come up in 3 months, in 6 months, in a year, next year.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, last question. What are your goals? What do you see in the future, next, 6 months, year, 2 years, 3 years? Where is Query going to go from here?
Yeah, I'd like us to continue to grow. We're doing really good work for the clients that we support, and I'm excited about the work that we do. I'm excited about our team. We're continuing to scale there as well. So what do I see 6 months? It's really, delivering on our vision of helping brands grow and being able to do more brand awareness campaigns and helping them really understand the impact of that while really maximizing their returns from their performance campaigns. I am excited to see more and more brands really value brand awareness and rethink their thinking on that. I'm hoping Query will continue building that education and being at the forefront of that as we kind of move forward there.
And how can people get a hold of you or connect with you?
Yeah, man, lots of ways. So one, LinkedIn is probably your easiest bet. Go on there, connect with me. I'll connect back with you for sure. Feel free to message me there. Check out our site. Again, weareqry.com. You'll see all the agency info there. You can book time on there. If in the notes you say, hey, you heard about us from the podcast, I'll jump on also. So don't hesitate. Definitely, feel free to use that.
That's great. Well, thank you so very much for all of the wonderful nuggets that you dropped today, Samir.
Thank you for having me. This was so much fun.
Yeah, absolutely. And for those of you listening, the best thing that you can do for us is to share this with others that that need to hear what Samir had to share with us today. And of course, give us a review. Those are like gold to podcasters, right?
Yep, they are.
Very well. And until next time, everyone, enjoy your marketing journey.
Thanks for listening to the Marketing Expedition podcast. Want to continue the journey? Don't miss out on new episodes. Subscribe on iTunes, Spotify, Amazon Music, or wherever you get your podcasts. Wouldn't it be great if there was one place you can go to get all the latest information and tips about marketing and advertising? The Marketing Expedition community is that place. People like you gather in our online community to build relationships with others and find the latest marketing trends, tactics, tools, and technology. We help you build your brand and your bottom line. Start your adventure today. Visit themarketingexpedition.com to find out more.